Good good afternoon, everyone. We are the Group 7, and we are going to discuss the ethics of Immanuel Kant. He is a renowned philosopher of the 18th century, and his ethical theory is often referred to as Kantian ethics. It is what our topic is all about. So, in this whole session, we are going to learn about two, the rights of theory of Immanuel Kant, and we are going to learn about goodwill and categorical imperative. So first, we are going to tackle about the background of Immanuel Kant.
So, biographical background of Kant. So, Immanuel Kant, born on April 22, 1724, and passing away on February 12, 1804, was a German philosopher who is considered the most influential thinker of the Enlightenment era. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest Western philosophers of all time. Kant works particularly in epistemology, theory of knowledge, aesthetics, and ethics, have had a profound impact on later philosophers, including contemporary thinkers. His ideas revolutionize our understanding of how we acquire knowledge, appreciate beauty, and determine moral principles. So, in summary, Immanuel Kant's contributions to philosophy, especially in the areas of epistemology, aesthetics, and ethics, have left an indelible mark on the field and continue to shape contemporary philosophical thought.
Overall, he only not made a prominent German philosopher, not only made a significant contribution, or he only not made significant contributions to Western philosophy, but also played a crucial role in the development of modern science. His main contribution was liberating science from ethology, allowing it to thrive independently. Kant's emphasis on the autonomy of science, inquiry and separation of science from religious dogma and a lasting impact on the scientific community. His ideas continue to shape the way of approach and understand science today. So this is a work of Kant's.
For Kant's moral theory, Kant argued that morality in deontological deon comes from the Greek for duty or obligation. So Kant argued that morality in theological meaning it is based solely on duty or obligation. Next slide, goodwill.
So, goodwill and duty. For Kant, a moral theory must be grounded on an account of what is unconditionally good. So, conditionally good is money, power, strength of character, even happiness. Unconditionally good is a goodwill. So, according to Kant, a moral theory must be grounded on an account of what is unconditionally good. For instance, things like money, power, strength of character, and even happiness are considered conditionally good because their value depends on certain conditions or circumstances. However, Kant argues that a goodwill is unconditionally good. An example of a goodwill is when a person acts out of a sense of duty and forms their action intentions based on a self-conscious respect for the moral law. This means that their decisions are wholly determined by moral demands regardless of any external or personal desires.
In this slide, duty, a goodwill is manifested in acting for the sake of duty. So according to Kant, a goodwill is demonstrated through actions performed for the sake of duty. Duty in this context refers to an objective principle that is independent of personal desires or objects of desires. So Kant further explained that the duty is necessary to act out of reverence for universal law, the presence of desires that could potentially operate separately from moral demands is what makes the concept of duty essential in understanding the goodness in human beings. So, duty is an objective maxim respectable of all desires, and if the presence of desires that could operate independently of moral demands, so that makes goodness in human beings constrained, and essential elements for the idea of duty. The ontological moral theory. So the rightness or wrongness of actions does not depend on their consequences, but on whether they fulfill our duty. So according to Kant, so the moral worth of action is not determined by their consequences or emotions. Instead, it depends on whether we fulfill our duty. In other words, the rightness or wrongness of an action is not based on the outcome it produces or the emotions it evokes, but rather on whether it aligns with our moral obligations and responsibilities. Thus, Kant emphasized the importance of acting in accordance with the duty, regardless of the potential outcomes or personal feelings involved. So neither consequences nor emotions determine moral worth. This picture is an example stating, I find you disgusting, but I'm going to help you anyway.
So the categorical imperative. The supreme principle of morality, according to Kant, is known as the categorical imperative. It is the fundamental principle that governs our moral duties. The categorical imperative consists of principles that are intrinsically valid and good in and of themselves. These principles must be obeyed by everyone in all situations and circumstances if our behavior is to align with the moral law. So for example, one formulation of the categorical imperative is the principle of universalizability. It states that we should only act in ways that we can will to become a universal law. In other words, if we cannot imagine everyone else acting in the same way without contradiction, then our action is morally wrong. For according to this principle, because if lying became a universal law, trust and communications would break down. So another formulation of the categorical imperative is the principle of treating humanity as an end in itself, rather than merely as a means to an end. This means that we should always respect the inherent dignity and worth of every individual. For example, using someone solely for personal gain or manipulating them for our own benefit would be a violation of these principles.
So in summary, the categorical imperative serves as the foundation for morality, providing principles that are universally applicable and must be followed by all individuals in all situations. Next slide is first formula of universal law. So the first formulation of the categorical imperative, often referred as the formula count, states act only according to the maxim, so which you can at the same time it will become a universal law. So these formulations guide us to determine the moral permissibility of an action by examining the maxim or principles behind it. So according to this formulation, an action is morally permissible if the maxim on which it based could be affirmed as a universal law that everyone should base without exceptions. So in other words, we should only act in ways that we can rationally will be followed by everyone in all similar situations. For example, let's consider the maxim of lying. Lying became a universal law, where everyone lied whenever it serves their interests. Trust and communication would break down. Therefore, lying is considered morally impermissible according to this formulation of the categorical imperative. So the mark of immorality that is when someone makes an exception for themselves and acts a maxim that they cannot will to be a universal law. This means that if we cannot imagine everyone else acting in the same way without contradictions, our action is morally wrong. So by this, in summary, the first formulation of categorical imperative provides a formal account to determine the morality permissibility of actions. Thus, it requires us to consider whether the maxim behind our actions can be willed as a universal law that everyone follows without exceptions.
For second formulation, the formula of the end itself, the second formulation of the categorical imperative, often referred as a humanity formulation, states so the thought of your humanity, that whether in your own person, in the or in the person of any other place at the same time as an end, never merely as a mean. This formulation emphasizes the importance of treating individuals as end in themselves, rather than merely as a means to an end. According to Kant, it is immortal to treat someone as a thing or merely. According to Kant, it is immoral to treat someone as a thing or merely instrument value. Instead, individuals or rational guests are agents means that we should never use or influence others solely for our own purpose to treat them as mere tools to achieve our goals. For example, consider a scenario where someone manipulates another person's emotion to get what they want. They would be considered immoral according to the humanity formulation as it treats the other person as a means to an end, disregarding their intrinsic value as a rational being. Kant argues the moral law to an end, it is not merely instrumental, but rather an end in itself. This end is rational agents, including ourselves, and recognizing and respecting the intrinsic value of humanity. We should uphold the moral law and treat others with dignity and respect. In summary, the second formulation of categorical imperative highlights the importance of treating individuals as ends in themselves, recognizing their intrinsic value as rational beings. It reminds us the moral law demands that we respect the intrinsic value and not treat others merely as a means to our own ends.
So third formulation, the formula of the kingdom events. So the third formulation of the categorical imperative combines the notion of a universal law and the idea of rational agents as ends in themselves. It states, act in accordance with the maxims of a member giving universal laws for a merely possible kingdom of ends. This formulation introduced the concept of a kingdom of ends, which is an ideal society where all individuals freely respect the intrinsic worth of humanity in others. In this kingdom of ends, all citizens autonomously recognize and adhere to the universal moral law. They treat others with dignity and respect, not as mere means to their own ends, but as ends in themselves. This recognition of the bindingness of the moral law for all rational agents creates a harmonious society where everyone's intrinsic worth is valued.
So Kant's improvements on the goal will deal with the categorical imperative. So it states, "Do unto others as you would have them do to you." So the phrase "do unto others as you would have them do unto you" is often referred to us as a golden rule. It is a moral principle that encourage individuals to treat others with the same kindness and respect and fairness that they would like to receive in themselves. Act according to the maxim that you would wish all other rational people to follow as it if were a universal law. So the statement that I have mentioned earlier, this formulation emphasized that the importance of considering the consequences and implication of actions everyone were to follow the same principles or the maxim. It encouraged us to think beyond our individual desire and consider the broader impact on our society. So in summary, the universal law formulation of the category imperative urge us to act according to the maxim that we would wish all other rational people to follow. It prompts us to consider the universality and consequences of our actions, ensuring that they can be applied as a universal law without contradiction. So next slide is the Kantian humans. So, so this is another example of Kantian humans where a World War II army medic followed his duty as a medic and still got to save 75 lives at Okinawa. So next is the 22-year-old Malian, which he saved the life of a child, and this is the Captain Phillips, where willingly offered himself as a hostage to protect his crew, demonstrating a sense of duty and respect for the moral law. And this is the other examples.